Is all right. We move this, get into present mode. All right. Oh, there it is. All right. Hope everyone can hear and see. Great to be back with you. I am sorry I missed the morning. I had 3 laptops going here, one for this state level conference I had a chance to speak in. So I connected with some folks in Chippewa Falls and Wausau, and then had another one for this LACCS training. So I heard some of what Joe Fay shared this morning. I wish I could have heard all of it. I know it was awesome. And I missed Andy Vitrano as well. I know that was awesome. So you all have had a very full day that I hope I can add a little bit to and put a nice bow on it for you so we can move things forward, as we like to say. All right, so getting back to the 11 principles of effective character education, we wanted to come back to, again, these standards that we can start to connect some of these pieces we heard not only this morning, but also from November into our current organization's context, so we can, again, articulate a plan and move things forward. Whether that's a plan that that's focused on emotional intelligence, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, or character education, or climate and culture, all of those things are kind of interconnected. So these standards can really bring things together. All right, starting from the 50,000-foot view. Again, our goal, here we are in November and December, is to have some community building as a LACCS cohort. So all of us in our different schools, we have this common experience that is growing each training from our time with Dr. Berkowitz through Primed as a framework. This 11 principles training is, again, a framework that closely aligns with Primed. To Vanessa's content she shared, to Joe Fay's content this morning. So all of these things we want to not only have a common experience, but to have you start to articulate a vision for your organization, your school, your college, or your team. Okay, and that's where we're going to be heading for January and February. Really kind of building some things into more of an action-based orientation that would also be particularly having some goals that may include some measurables. So please keep that idea in your back pocket. We're going to have a backward by design approach, knowing that our goal as LACCS coaches is to have you be equipped to present an application for a Promising Practice Award. At the very least, some of you are ready for more, and that's great. But again, we want to get you some content and the necessary information to articulate a plan, and that plan, we hope, leads to a Promising Practices application. All right, so that's our 50,000-foot view. I do want to bring in Joe Fay at this point as we dive into our 11 principles. Joe Fay, is there anything you want to piggyback off of this morning, or just kind of tie in different things for different principles?
You know, let's just tie it in. That would be okay? Perfect.
Yes. If there is something that jumps up from the morning, you want to bring it back, just dive right into the conversation.
Okay, I'll be ready.
All right. All right, a quick overview starting again. Principles 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we looked at in November. Those are really some of the big rocks. We talk about working on school culture. That starts with defining some core values. We talk about thinking about feeling, doing, and thinking language to define comprehensively character education and those core values. And then principle 3, we have this approach that really touches on all aspects of teaching and learning. We've always said that good character education is quite simply good education. So keeping our end users in mind, what are the things we can do to help our organization be better, but be the best we can for our students or our customers. All right, and that first principle 4, that big rock of being a caring community, this really serves as our jumping off point for principles 5 through the rest of them, principle 11. So really, we're going to start to get a little more refined and a little more detailed in principles 5 through 11. So the way we stopped in November was really a perfect spot. Picking that up with this caring community now in December, we can move things forward in a little bit more of a detailed manner moving ahead. All right. So principle 5, our school provides students with opportunities for moral action. Our indicators here really have an emphasis on service, which is a great part of every organization to be service-minded, whether that's staff providing a service or students providing a service. But we get a little bit detailed when we talk about this idea of service learning, okay? Principle 5 helps remind us that if we're doing action out in the community or in our school, that's great, but that's service. A little bit different from that is service learning. And what I like to remind folks is that hyphen in between the word service and learning is reflection, okay? Not that you've just done some stuff, but you deliberately took some time to think back about it, reflect about it, and apply it to developing character. All right, that's what these indicators are all about. Provide opportunities, but not only for the doing, but also provide opportunities for the reflecting, and then make that a collective experience after you've completed the event or the doing part. Okay, our school or our college is going to provide these things for students deliberately, and then we're also going to be really careful to have time to reflect, learn together, and then see how we've developed individual character as well as organizational character. Okay, Joe Fay, any examples from the reviewer side when you think about what this looks like?
So a quick tie-in I can say from this morning. So as we're going through the principles, the right-hand side are your principles, the left-hand side could be how you're going to apply it. And if you can start collecting those ideas as we're walking through it, when you do get to that process of starting to put things together, you'll already have ideas generated together in one little book that all you have to do is transfer over. So as far as like from the reviewer side, I'm glad you pointed out the information regarding the service learning versus community service, because this year with any applications that do go forward, they're really going to have us watch for that to make sure that the evidence does really link up and that you do really have a distinct difference between what service learning is and what community service is. So Colin, I'm glad you mentioned that.
All right, and again, I don't want to cut the conversation and the chance to share great examples from this whole cohort. Are there any schools or any leaders that have an example they'd quick like to share about service learning?
I could jump in real quick. One of our elementary schools, this is Mark Chapin, principal at Meyer Middle School in River Falls. Greenwood Elementary School is one of our national schools of character in our district. I'll just point out one example. They do a neighborhood, they rake leaves in the neighborhood around the school, but it goes well beyond that, where they talk about in some of the classes, why do leaves change color? What impact does raking leaves have on the environment? Then the kids take a leaf and they do an etching, and then they in their journals, actually the journals follow them from grade to grade, but one of the entries in the journal is, how did this experience impact you personally? What did you learn about this service learning project? So they definitely take the time for that reflection. That's just one example at Greenwood Elementary School.
Great, thank you, Mark. All right, if at any time you think of an example, by all means, give voice to it. But just a heads up, I'm going to put my teacher hat on and I'm going to start cold calling some folks. So be ready. Here we go. All right, principle 6. This is really some meat and potatoes about what learning organizations are all about. We're going to offer that meaningful and challenging academic curriculum. So by no means do we want to have separate work being done in our organization away from the classroom or away from curricular learning, okay? That isn't a separate venture. This is very much connected to it, okay? So the academic curriculum really not only should be challenging for students, but we should be looking at ways to understand and accommodate diverse interests, cultures, and learning needs of all students. more so than ever, we need to be on our game when it comes to recognizing and celebrating diversity and understanding how impactful that can be on a learning environment. We need this now more than ever. So this principle really resonates for a time such as this. Empowering our teachers, giving them the green light to go and do this is very liberating, because a lot of times when teachers think about curriculum, they think about what they have to do instead of what they get to do and their voice and reflecting the students' diversity within that experience. So we need to really promote this. Develop performance character traits that support students' intellectual growth, academic performance, and capacity for both self-directed and teamwork. So we're going to start to tie back into that intrinsic motivation piece that Dr. Berkovitz really was clear about. So principle 6 is just good education, but we always need to be mindful of representing diverse interests and having that student and teacher voice empowered within our learning in our classrooms. All right. Go ahead, Joe-Fei.
Oh, and I was going to say this, I actually think is a good piece to the emotional intelligence information that we just heard, because in order for you to know what to select as far as character traits and things like that for your school, you've got to know who you are first before you can even pick something out to show other students how to be who they need to be or who they need to become. So if nothing else, starting with principle 6, connecting that emotional intelligence information there, and just starting as a staff, talking about what does that look, feel, and sound like there, and then building the work from there. That's how you can help staff or any colleagues be able to connect their own emotions and who they are. And now they have to move forward and help support others. So that's where I would connect it 100%.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to reach out to my friend Yesenia at Carmen. Carmen, would you have anything to add thinking about this principle?
Hey, Colin, way to cold call me. I think about how we really push our teachers to develop their curriculum and also to look at it with a critical eye, since a lot of times teachers are giving, like our middle school teachers are given curriculum, and we talk about like, who does this leave out? And is that representative of the students that you teach? And if the answer is yes, then what work do you as an educator, that's not something that like I'm telling you to do, but as an educator, knowing the population that we serve, like what can you do to change that? Or what can we supplement or change in general? And so we do a lot of that reflection and in coaching one-on-one, because I also feel like that's really personal for teachers. Yeah, and so we look at through coaching, like what are you teaching this week? Does this reflect students? And if not, what's even like one little tweak that we can add to make sure that, you know, it represents the population that we teach.
Thank you, Yesenia. I know what great work's going on at Carmen, so I knew you'd have something on that principle. So thank you for sharing that. All right, anybody else want to add? Going once, going twice, and sold. All right, principle 7, the school fosters student self-motivation. So this ties directly with the primed framework, that notion of intrinsic motivation. Principles, indicators 7.1 through 7.3 really have the focus on recognizing and celebrating instead of rewarding and the punitive side of even mistakes and discipline. So it really keeps learning at the heart, but also from that positive natural benefit of building intrinsic motivation. You can still do that through recognizing. One of the things Dr. Berkowitz mentioned that stayed with me is, you know, if you've got a great shout out, give that person a call or shoot them an email, just tell them what a great job they're doing. It doesn't have to be, you know, a deliberate part of a meeting or something done just to feel like doing it, because yep, that's the time we do it on our agenda. It can be very spontaneous, very genuine. The same goes between that teacher and student. That recognition can go, it can go on at any time and really celebrate the positive within the classroom. And I wanted to just take a moment, this aspect of 7.3, it's evident in how teachers organize the classes. we're not talking about desks and tables. We really want to think about routines. So how does this learning organization run, and is celebrating and recognizing kind of built into how we work together? Is the teacher or the building leader really kind of tapped in to lift up these things that are really organizational strengths or people strengths, or are things more on the punitive side? So we really want to keep that. Again, that goes right along with the teaching and learning part of Principle 6. Faye, anything to add?
Yeah, so I wrote down, so an example would be on our campus, what we do, we have what is called Wow Wednesday. So a member of our care team, she's in charge of receiving all the wows throughout the week. Instead of us waiting until the end of the week to read all the praises, because sometimes things are not read at the end of the week, we do it in midweek wow on Wednesdays, and all the staff members send her an email, and then she provides all of the wows. Well, we added a piece because we're virtual and it's hard for all of us to get together. So we have added this year, we're reintroducing ourselves as a staff. So each grade level has a crazy question to answer, and there's a photo of them, and it goes out in the Wow Wednesday. Hi, my name is, I'm in this grade level, and here's something crazy about us, and then here's the rest of the wows. So that would be an example of how we're not handing out money, but just that intrinsic piece where at least if they may not ever see a wow that someone gives them, but they're going to be a part of a wow between now and then. And it's really cool. The staff is really enjoying that, but that will be an example of that Principle 7. And then I was going to add to that 7.3 that I'm so glad you said that as far as the routines. That's that engagement, that motivation that you have not only for students, but staff and parents can also be connected there too. It's a community piece of how everybody is motivated to be engaged in the process, and not just academics. It could be anything as far as keeping everybody connected. So I think everything we've talked about today has really hit this Principle 7.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to call my friends at Alverno to hear what they may be thinking about in terms of just recognizing staff. But before I do, I wanted to come back to this this notion about the timing, and what Dr. Berkowitz really helped me understand is it's okay to have a standing agenda item to recognize folks, because so often if it's not something we do deliberately, it won't get done, and it's really important to do so, provided we're not just doing it to do it. And I really like how he kind of, that litmus test is, you should also feel free in your organization to just dial someone up or reach out to someone, to really have that culture where you can just recognize freely great work that's going on. And now, anybody from Alverno want to share about their thoughts on this principle?
I guess I would just share that given the abilities-based approach that's taken at Alverno, it's tied to the notion of assessment as learning. And so there is, I think, a really nice aspect of developing self-motivation by recognizing that assessment in its truest form becomes an opportunity to learn and grow, learning where our strengths are, learning where our deficits are. And what I appreciate so much about the staff and faculty at Alverno is that they embrace this as part of their work, a willingness to be able to help. And Renette, I'm going to steal your language again, call one another up where we might be falling short, and that willingness to authentically recognize when individuals are doing well. I think it's embedded within the culture, and I think it speaks back to that assessment and learning and the abilities-based, what can you do approach of the curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Foy. And just a great example of some organizational core values that are alive and into action every day, really put into practice well at Alverno. So thank you for sharing that.
Colin, could I share? This is Marisa, the postcards that my school created with the way we're sharing positive things with kids.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the school where I teach, the acronym for our character traits are PERKS. And if perseverance, empathy, responsibility, kindness, and self-discipline. And that's really embedded in the way we do all of our classes. But a few years ago, the K4 team did an expedition with the 4-year-olds where they interviewed older kids about what each of these traits meant, and they made these postcards. And so now, especially during virtual learning, my colleagues and I send postcards home to kids when we notice them doing something with responsibility or kindness or self-discipline. The kids made personal goals about what they wanted to work on, but I just find that they're so pleasing. And they partnered with high school students, graphic design students, to make the actual postcards, but it was just a wonderful thing for us to be able to do. And it ends up being private. It's not public recognition because it's just going home to the child. So.
Thank you, Marisa. Yeah, and absolutely some overlap with the goal of this principle being met through that activity, but also some acts of service there and just some outreach that we start to see some, again, some interconnectedness with these principles. So thank you for sharing that. All right, principles 8 through 11, I really want you to think about a current initiative to develop character, now kind of getting locked in, being sustainable, and then expanding. So that's really the heart and soul of principles 8 through 11. So now you're going to start to hear some language. All staff, shared responsibility, holding each other accountable. All right, so principle 8 really takes this, you may have a leader or a leadership team working on an action plan for your character initiative. Now we want to expand that. We want everybody on board. We want a common goal. We want all of our arrows pointing in the right direction, the same direction. And that's what the evidence we're looking at for principle 8. All staff share the responsibility for developing, implementing, and modeling, so that equity of voice is really an important theme moving this work forward. All staff's committed. They can hold each other accountable for modeling it. We're not only working together in our plan for what we should do, but in the action of how we're going to do it. And this is a school-wide venture or an organization-wide venture. There aren't any pockets, there aren't any silos. We are standing on common, equal ground, and everybody's pulling in the same direction. Here's the big one for me, 8.3. Time is given for staff to learn about, plan, reflect of the teaching of character in their roles. All right, so it's not just, again, for the leadership team. We're talking about a building-wide meeting. How, is this part of your staff meeting, and is there deliberate time that's set aside to work on this together? If there isn't that time that's deliberately set aside, if you're like me and if you've seen it happen, it's probably something that falls off the plate. It's not sustained, and it's usually held on by a couple of folks who are keeping the work moving forward. Okay. All right. Anything to add, Jo Fei? Anything evidence-based, how this looks?
Yeah, one example could be, so we use a 4-quadrant example on our campus. And so I wrote down the word same, keep like the same standard all the time, like the same process or the same protocol really helps staff to feel like that they are not on this roller coaster of emotions with trying to provide feedback. So we have this quadrant, and the first quadrant, we have the word define. The second quadrant, do. The third quadrant, delegate. And the fourth one, done. And so define, going back to what Colin was talking about, what do you want to work on? Do is the task and how you're going to communicate it. The delegate goes under that 8.3. You stop and delegate time to who's going to do what and the timeline of getting everything done. And then that done piece is that celebrate and monitor along the way. And so having that kind of a process with 8, 1, 2, and 3 there really does help bring the entire staff on. And you don't go past do part until you have all voices. And it could just be that that person just gives a thumbs up. And if they give a thumbs up, then you have their voice in it. But that will be one way, and then just have it in a secure location, have it in a location where they can have access to it. So that was what I was thinking as you were talking through that, as a really simple example of how you can bring out how you're gathering that feedback. That would be evidence that I would look for. And then what I would look for is, like Colin said, it's not that one time. How often are you going back to that process of gathering feedback, and how often are you using it to work through different things that you're trying to work on your campus? So it's not a one and done. It should be a continuous process of thinking and processing and celebrating and going back through your work with your staff.
All right. I hope my friend Marquise is on the call. I'm going to reach out to him and see if he has any thoughts to add about Principle 8. And if he is, we're going to hear from Marquise in just a minute. But I had a quick story that made me, this principle made me think about that all roles aspect. And one past practice that I saw that I was so impressed with was the planning that went into the school's work that included paraprofessionals, office staff, and custodians. A quick story in that this building had one custodian, and he had shared, if we're going to be an organization of character, why should I see some of the over-the-top messes from students after they eat lunch? So part of his day is getting that lunchroom set ready for the next group. One group was leaving it in shambles for the next group. So we turned this over to the students, and the process was, tables would be dismissed. Students would be the dismissers, and they would have to monitor themselves to make sure their area was clean enough, and nobody was going anywhere until they were responsible with their areas. So we made that a practice, a focus. A few months later, we had a follow-up meeting. He said, I can see the difference. We actually took some pictures, showed them in an all-staff assembly of before and after, and it was just a way to hear, again, from all roles, and a very clear example of, hey, if we're going to commit to this work, then it's at all times in the day, it's in every room, it's in every part of your school experience, and we're going to hold each other accountable. All right, Marquise, are you there? I was hoping to hear from Marquise. All right, I hope he's doing okay. We'll catch him next time. Anybody else want to add to Principle 8? Going once, going twice. Sold. All right, again, thinking of sustainability and expanding of our initiative here. There's shared leadership that's in place. There's long-range support. And then now we've gotten a handle on an action plan. We want to be very mindful of continuous improvement. I love how we're going to stand on equal ground as an organization, but we need to please recognize, especially in the K-12 world, how important the school principal is. So this indicator really calls it out to say our principal, as well as other leaders, they're engaged in this work. It is not something delegated for other people to handle. We're all in it together, and it starts with that school's principal. There's also a team, and that team includes staff, students, and parents. Again, we're going to be collaborative as we can be. We're going to open this vision up to not only beyond families of the school, but even the community. And then 9.3 reminds us we're going to really go out of our way to hear from students. And I love Marisa's example, even our K-4 students. They can play a role in this. They have actions they can engage in and learn from. Anything to add, Jo Faye?
A really simple process that you could use for the ongoing continuous improvement. Creating a, it looks like a KWL chart, but the first column is the things that you are going to stop doing on your campus or that you want to stop doing. The middle column says that what you want to start doing. So you have a stop, start. And then the last column says continue. And that is like a non-threatening way to gather from everyone ideas of things you need to do. And then you use that chart to continue to monitor that continuous improvement, because you can constantly see the things that need to continue on. And so we do that every 6 weeks. We have a group that comes together to do that. And then the whole staff provides feedback throughout. And then we make changes in our campus improvement every 6 weeks as needed based on the feedback that we receive. So it's been really powerful for us to do it that way. So that would be one example of how you could do that.
Great.
Is that just around your character education that you use the KWL?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Is that just based around like your character education goals that you guys use that for?
We do it for everything, actually. So the same process I do for one, we just do it for all and just take the title off and the topic off and put a new topic on and use it for each one.
And so you talk with the staff first and then you have a separate little group that goes over it after. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, so what I do is, so I'll find out from the staff. We send a survey out every 6 weeks. We'll ask, what are some things that you're needing for professional development at this time pertaining to blank? And we just do it 6 weeks at a time. We gather all the feedback and then we place it on the chart. We have we call them the focus group. The focus group will help us narrow down what will be pertinent for the 6 weeks. And then we turn around and actually apply the feedback that was given. So the staff knows they're giving feedback and then their colleagues are narrowing down the feedback like a funnel for us. And then we move forward with putting the task together. And what we've done is given ourselves permission to take on one or two things instead of trying to take on. So we're becoming masters of one instead of minors of many with this process. And they feel heard, we feel heard, and it's allowing us to just really chunk everything we need to do at this time, because remember, they are doing the best they can do and they cannot take on one more thing. So we're listening and we use this process to keep us moving, but still making sure that what we're doing matters.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yep, great follow-up. And I wanted to reach out to my friends at Swallow, because I know they do some things that are really student-driven. And then I wanted to make some follow-up comments for my friends at TFA. So anybody from Swallow?
Yeah, Jeannie Hansen here. What specifically did you want me? Sorry, I'm kind of in and out here. What specifically did you want me to
No, thanks, Jeannie. Just
talk about?
any examples or next steps that Swallow's working on for this continuous improvement, and then really providing some sustainability or some long-range support.
Right. One of the things that we've been focusing on is mindfulness at school here, and we start our morning announcement. We don't start them, but in the middle of our morning announcements, we have a mindful minute every day that the whole school participates in. And in my class particularly, I've been integrating mindfulness and some kind of mindful movement too. I teach the little kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, Spanish. So incorporating some Spanish and getting some mindfulness in with them, noticing just some really, really big gains from the beginning of the year of little ones, a lot of positive affirmations at the beginning of the day we do, and really trying to cultivate that from the start of the day on with the kids. Really seems to be working well, and they're responding really well and being a little bit more in self-control of their emotions and stuff.
Great. Jeannie, thank you. I really appreciate sharing that practice. And my friends at TFA, just kind of thinking about their context, really maybe come back to this principle and deliberately share some messages that, you know, we're striving for this all-inclusive, the whole school as an organization, the principals on board. That's a great ideal, but the reality is, you know, that may not be your school. And this may not be the time you find yourself in, you know, with everything else on the plate. You may kind of feel like you're on that character island, and that's okay. So the recommendation I have in terms of this principle is to start where you can start, involve the students you can, involve the parents you can, collaborate with the staff you can, and grow from there. We totally understand not every school principal will value this work as it could and should be. There may be some obstacles that would keep a school leader from digging deeper and providing necessary leadership that may impact the sustainability. You know, and I've worked with some schools where the teacher said, it's just me, you know, like I am the committee. Well, that's a great opportunity to walk the walk, report out some impact that you've delivered, some feedback from parents, working with a student that may have been difficult, who's a little less rough around the edges because of your work, and start where you can start. And from there, grow and celebrate the small wins and the big wins. And that's important to keep in mind as well. All right, on to Principle 10. So again, thinking big. We're engaging families in the community as partners. Again, we're standing on some level ground. We're pulling in the same direction, and our families are involved. One of the big things for these indicators is to kind of think of Principle 10 as almost like a rebrand. As a school, we may have some family outreach. How can we fuse character into what we're already doing? We may have some, like a family night, or even part of our parent-teacher conferences. Let's use that as an opportunity to make some statements about what we're working on within our organization and invite parents in. The last thing we want is a silo of parents where there's one or two that feel like they're making all the decisions. We want as many parents as we can involved, and we want to kind of get away from that PTO president, one person makes a decision kind of approach. That may be a reality you've seen. I know I have. The spirit behind this principle is really an all-inclusive invitation for everybody, whether it's a family new to the school or they've had 10 kids and you've had a relationship for over 10 years with this family. All right. Think about rebranding your communication. You may have a school newsletter. It may go out monthly, but how can you fuse character into the messages? How can you organize your report card to prioritize this work? If we're saying it's so tied to learning, that should be evidenced by the feedback we're giving about your child's learning, about your students' growth, about the goals they set. Those should all be collaborative efforts that should include the family. And then finally, let's not stop with families. Indicator 10.3 is let's get out to the community. Let's talk to business leaders. What do they want from our graduates? What kind of students are we sending to the workforce? How can character development help them be better employees and people? Community members. There should be an element of civics. I want some neighbors who are going to be great people. And that certainly speaks to how our organizations are shaping students' futures. So Joe-Fei, any details you want to follow up on?
Yeah, I think the key thing there is that community piece. So you touched on it very, very well. I think this one, this one is what it is with this one. I think if nothing else, virtually, this one is a huge one that I think we have so many positive ways to build, because Zoom is the new way of sending that note, and so that's the only communication that we have right now, because we can't come face to face. So the more that you're doing those Facebook Lives or those Zoom meetings, or any of those type of things where you're still able to bridge this gap that we have of communication, I think, the better. So, and parents want to be a part, the community wants to come in and be a part. And the more that we can use technology to our advantage, I think right now, the better, because people want that. They're missing out on that connectiveness. So I think use the technology to your advantage to really build that brand up of that connectiveness, because it's a true village. So the more that you can show the village piece in Principle 10, the better.
Well said. All right, I'm going to reach out to my friends at Mesmer. Any current work, future work that may pertain to Principle 10 that you would like to share about?
We were actually just talking about this in a staff meeting today, because this is something that we're really struggling with. This is the piece that we're missing. So with all the other principals, we've done a lot of work within our building, but it's that community piece that's missing, or that family piece that's missing, especially now that we're completely virtual. It makes it so much more difficult to get families involved in what we're doing. So this is one of our struggles, actually.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, we send out surveys a lot. We send out emails a lot. And the response just isn't the same as it was at the beginning of the year, just because of so many coming out. So that's just one issue that we're continuing to work on.
Yep. Thank you for that, Adam. And I'm not sure who else who shared, but thank you so much. As much as these principals strive for, again, outreach and growth, the current reality is, that's engaging in really complex and difficult work, especially at these times. To think about getting a staff on board, that is a significant challenge. To then expand that into families and community, beyond the school walls, we seemingly have less and less control outside of, the messages we're sending out, the invitations we're leaving, the doors we want to continue to have remain open for as many to engage as can be. Thank you for sharing, Mesmer. Greatly appreciated. All right, and principle 11, this one can really be summed up as keep the work moving forward, keep it fresh. As time goes by, try to avoid the ruts and making this drift into the status quo, check the box kind of an approach to an initiative. The school's gonna really continue to remain focused on culture and climate. We're gonna remain deliberate on character growth in students. Our core values will still be at the forefront of what we do. And we're gonna continue to assess. And I like how Adam mentioned there's some survey data we can use as a barometer, some climate surveys, some student data that can be indicators for how we're doing. When I started, I kind of looked at some of the not so great data pieces that go along with school, expulsions, suspensions, office referrals, tardies, truancies. Some of those things were really sending some messages that we could focus on and work on as a building, and that drove a lot of the work. Jofei, anything you want to add to Principle 11?
That's it. Principle 11 is to me, that's the one that just says, are you in it to win it? It's not just a one and done. This is a commitment one. So you look at, if we go back to principle 10 real quick with Adam, what I wanted to say real quick, because an example would be one angle to look at a parent, the way I tell my parents, I tell them this, you're already involved 50% of it already because you enrolled your kid, filled out the paperwork, and you brought them. It's the other 50% that we struggle with our parents, or our parents struggle with us, whether they bring in their own bias of what school is for them because of what they went through, or if you're in a community where kids don't do anything past a certain grade level anyway, or if their parents are just struggling right now and they cannot do one more thing. If there's a way that the staff or your organization can just look for that one thing that we want to become successful at, and even ask the parent, what is that one thing that you need from us? Maybe we can start from that angle. So now the 50% becomes the 60%. That might help to kind of look at it from that. And some of our parents felt better knowing that we were looking at it from that angle. And that helped a little bit to gain more of that connectedness with our families, because we had the same struggle, 100%. They don't want to fill out one more survey. We didn't want to fill out one more survey. But the more that we could approach it from that angle, that really helped us out, which goes back to that principle 11 about that true commitment to the process. And we just made it that's our focus for the week or the 3 weeks. And we didn't, pick up anything else. So that might help a little bit with that, Adam.
Well, one thing that we had talked about too is instead of it always coming from an administration, come from the teachers themselves.
Yep.
And see if that would help.
I will tell you, Adam, it does. Here's why. And I my feelings got hurt. I'll be honest with you. I was like, what? We love you. But they want to hear, if they can hear from the teacher, because that's their first line of defense. So I had to go that route. And my teachers became the voice of reason of what we needed. And then we started doing virtual meetings with our families. And what we noticed is that I had a group of parents that showed up for the virtual piece of our in-person kids. And we had a piece that showed up for our virtual students. And I praised the ones who were there, but it didn't mean that the other ones who couldn't be there didn't matter or didn't care about what we needed to talk about. They have lives happening outside of 5 o'clock too. So I just chose to look at it from that angle and just say thank you guys for all this and that, through all the information out there through the teachers and through Facebook and through Twitter. And everybody's been really receptive. And what I found out later is that parents actually did read it. They just couldn't come at 5:30. But we felt defeated. Oh my gosh, only 12 people. But those were the 12 people that needed to hear us say it.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean that the other 400 people didn't read it.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I wanted to just take a moment, open it up to anybody for some final thoughts. Any other groups that wanted to chime in, or any final thoughts from Mark as we wrap up Principle 11?
Colin, I think just the intentionality that needs to happen around assessing how we are, because sometimes I think we can become complacent and we did that well in this season, but in school and in life, seasons change and shift. And so I really like the fact that we're looking at the intentionality that has to happen around looking at how our character education is going, our culture, our climate on a regular basis, especially when different things happen in society, within the school walls, and then within our family walls.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded like my friend Fred at EBA.
Yes, sir.
I can't see the face, but I can hear the voice. I was just going to have Fred present and just have him use that voice and keep everybody engaged, because I could listen to that voice all day. So I know great work at EBA, and I appreciate Fred jumping in and sharing that. It's definitely about intentionality. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Colin.
Great. One last item of business from the LACCS cohort perspective. So all these different groups, we have heard your voice, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for networking to not only happen through breakout groups, but beyond the training days. And we had thought as a leadership team how we can do that. And we had talked about not just an average book study, but a way for us to, again, send that invitation out to all of us through what we call bindings and bondings. There'll be a menu of items on different nights through these coming months for anyone to engage in a group of cohort members in other schools, at other colleges, to read articles, think about a book, connect about a topic. So we'll push those out via email, not only what the article topics are, but also the time and place, just to connect virtually, have a very informal time to get together. Again, we're calling it bindings and bondings. And it's, again, really informal way to network, kind of get out of our groups a little bit in this formal kind of training approach, and really network informally with a relaxed approach after training. So look forward to that information. Bindings and bondings coming to a theater near you. Very good. All right, I'm going to stop my share and turn it back over to Marisa.
One more piece about that, can you hear me? Is
I can hear
that
somebody.
It's me, it's Ronette. Excuse me. All of the books and resources for those opportunities, something's in my throat, excuse me, are going to be free. We will be supplying the books and resources for those opportunities. Free, yes, Lisa.
So Ronette, the one question I had is, I know that Amira is here, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to do the breakout rooms right now, or if we wanted to work with Amira now. I got a little mixed up with what we're doing next.
Yes, actually, Ariane is getting ready to introduce Amira.
Hooray!
Hooray! So everyone, as you know, we always end with Amira, our poet, Alverno student, and she has created another original piece for us today. So if you can turn your cameras on, that'd be amazing.
So Amira, welcome back. I feel like you need little introduction this time because people were so impressed with what you produced the first time. And we are so excited to have you join us today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to share this poem. A little background about this poem.
the topic I was given and asked to speak upon was well-being. And when I think of well-being, especially of educators, I think of self-care. And a lot of times as educators and servants, you give so much that you forget about yourself. So this poem is to encourage you and to help you keep going. So when boarding a plane, the flight attendants always give instructions before takeoff. Put on your oxygen mask first, because how can you help someone else breathe when you are running out of air? How can you tell someone how to be a better them when you never take time for self-care? How can your cup ever overflow if you never take time to fill it up? Today is not about the them, it's about you. You can't care about them until you care about you. Because without watering love and care, you will never reap good fruit. Sow into yourself until you see the real you. Without setting a good example, who will the youth look to? See, being present for yourself is not selfish. Emotionally, did you consider your own feelings today? Socially, are you being true to yourself? Are you giving too much of you that you don't recognize yourself? Environmentally, have you cleaned up? Are you in a space where you can breathe and see and aren't being consumed of yourself? I know it may be too much. Take a deep breath and just breathe. Because all these things that you put into others, you can also put into yourself. And don't ever forget that you are enough. You are human. You have love. You give love. And sometimes no one deserves it, but you still give because deep down, you are the greatest servant. You are an amazing person. See, these affirmations are very intentional as a reminder of the great things you forget you can do. So let this be your own personal elf on the shelf, reminding you to look in the mirror and be nice to yourself. So that kind spirit will illuminate from your body, that your love will become action words, that you will serve from your overflow, and eventually from your saucer, that you have enough care left for yourself. And in the midst of it all, serving feels so much better when you don't forget about you. Thank you.